about tonight, transferring nukes into hives, while replacing basically this whole apiary. I've had to replace the whole lot, and I had varroa, I had starvation, and then afterwards I had isolation starvation. Because basically that there is the east, and we had the beast from the east just came belting through here, brand new apiary last autumn. Didn't even think about we'd ever get that. And what happens, it rips through here. So this autumn these bees are all going to be moved out. Luckily the soil's a bit firmer now. I can drive my truck into this apiary and get these bees done. Last transfer here tonight. So they'll be in their colonies and they're absolutely full. They're bursting. There are far too many bees in this nuke. But there you go, that happens. That's the way it is. Get them straight in, and then all the others have been done. Off they go. When you get a lot of bees left in the nuke, the quickest way is just to stand the nuke up on its end, smoke it a little bit, and they all just pour in. And it means you're not shaking them all over the place as well. Sometimes you see a queen run in, it's a bit of fun. Look at them go. Good nukes. Too strong. But they're okay, they're done now. This is a really strong one. This is actually on 5 frames. It should have been on 9 or 10 by now. So these have got some catching up to do, but they will. Put all the gear away now. It's the tidying up after that takes the time. They're on their way now. So that's this apiary all back up to speed. These are all good nukes that have gone in, as you saw in the last one there. They're all like that, every single one. But the cost of replacing this apiary is obviously substantial. 10 nukes, 130 euros each, 1,300 euros worth of bees gone in here. And you've got to look at why I lost them in the first place. Well, as with many losses this winter, I'm about the 30%. Now this apiary and one other took it hard. The other ones, 10-20%, no problem. So overall about 30, maybe 33%. But I consider myself fairly lucky in that respect, so I didn't lose too much. But I had these nukes that I was going to sell for profit for this spring. So I've had to take a cut in my turnover, but I had the nukes. Where were they when I needed them? Right in my yards, right where I needed them to replace the winter losses. That's what this is all about, trying to create some sustainability. Now, why did my bees die? So I don't want to happen again. Well, one of the main reasons, I'd say 60% of the losses was probably varroa. We've got colonies that just went too small. They just left the colony, bit by bit, dribbled away into the autumn. I didn't treat these boxes. I didn't treat them till well into August before I started my 3 treatments on them. So, and I'm only relying on vaporized oxalic acid last year for the first time. So I had losses because of that. The other reason why was because this is west, as you can see the sun's just gone down, and this is east. And it's basically directly open to the east. So I put all these bees in this apiary last autumn thinking, oh, it's fine, they're fairly sheltered here. Way, hey, no, they're not. Absolutely howling easterly wind. So small colonies that were already struggling to challenge against varroa, and they were carrying heavily infested with different viruses because the varroa had obviously been quite strong when the winter bees were being made. Then took its toll on what was remaining. So the clusters then got smaller and smaller, then eventually isolation starvation took over. So there you go. That's why I lost bees this winter. But I've got nukes. And it's just set back, obviously, but I won't be overwintering in this apiary again. I know in October next year I'll still be able to get the truck in because it's fairly good, this apiary, till about end of October. I'll get the truck right alongside and move these all back home if I need to, or to another apiary that's more sheltered, because it's just too much of a risk. I've had other apiaries that have had smaller colonies of bees that all overwintered fine. And I'm convinced that a lot of these would have survived if it hadn't been from that final blast, the bees from the east that took out a lot of hives in the UK and Europe. So I'm not saying Varroa wasn't an issue, because I know it definitely was. But I had a bit of bad luck and a bit of, how can you say, short thinking on my point of view, but that's what happens when you become a professional. You think you know it all, but you are such a small fish in a huge pond when you start out on this on your own, and it's all experience. So I'll be more vigilant now. I'm doing Varroa checks earlier in the year to calculate my numbers. I'm also going to do a Varroa treatment on a lot of my colonies. All of them basically going to have an oxalic acid at the end of the first summer flow. So that'll keep the numbers down a little bit, so we won't be going into the summer flow with high numbers. So that's my modus operandum, and I'm also considering a chemical treatment of amatraz, but I've got to look at that and work out the cost, because I know oxalic acid works, but it just needs the persistent treatment of 3 to 4 treatments over every 5 to 6 days. And to do that, the workload is enormous, where you can stick one amatraz strip in, and then it's treated for 60 days, and it continues working for that period, or at least a good 40 days. So it's a no-brainer really, but it's not what I want to do. But there you go. You do what you can. You consider all the options, and when you start to have quite a few hives, you have to be absolutely realistic, and it becomes harder and harder. And you can see how these guys who you think when you're an amateur, we don't perhaps have as much time for them as we ought to, because they're all up against it, and they're all doing exactly the same thing but on a huge scale. So when amateurs have winter losses, the professionals are probably worse, sometimes greater. And this year I know some beekeepers in Brittany have had big losses, but the professionals are up to 50 to 60%, some of them. So, because they haven't got the time to give the extra 3 treatments. But if they don't make nucleus colonies, you can't do the replacements. So there you go, I'll end the day on that, and it's pondering, but I've got the replacements and things are looking up. So will be these colonies now, my management will be, they'll be fed if they need to be, but they'll be all right for the next 2 weeks, because we've still got 2 weeks of the flow before the June gap. If they're not expanded, which I doubt they won't be, I'm sure they'll expand in about a week, then they may even expand enough to take a nuke from them, give them a little split, 2 or 3 frames, or a frame from 3. I'll see how they are. And then give them a queen, because I'm starting queen rearing in 3 weeks. So then they'll have the summer flow. Then they should all give me honey, this yard. And it's in a good area. There's a lot of good trees around here. And another thing to add is I don't mind discussing my losses, because I feel it's something we can only strive to make our bees better by talking about it and communicating and having rational discussions with other beekeepers. You know, I speak to beekeepers all around the world now, and I consider it absolutely amazing that we can share ideas literally at the click of a mouse, and you can have really good discussions with really educated people who have the same problem as you, and they're not afraid to share their stuff as well. There's all this hiddenness of can't say that and can't do this and can't do that. You should just get out in the open, because I tell you what, you learn an awful lot more by being open-minded and seeing every point of view. But anyway, that's just how I feel about things. I don't think you should bottle it all up, because I think it's not good for your head anyway. I think you should talk about things, you should discuss them with people who know, and by sharing things, you work out a solution. You work out how to fix problems. It's the only way forward, is by getting on that telephone, having a chat with your mates, and you end up getting good friends who you can really confide in and say, oh, I have a real problem here, what do you reckon? They're all sharing, and which is the most important thing. We can all do this, we can all make it better for our bees, but it's just getting through this Varroa problem that's one of the biggest issues. And everybody says the biggest problem we have is the Varroa issue. When we can crack that, we'll be on the way to getting a lot of stress off the bees. But until then, well, we'll just do the best we can.